And so, we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. A story about power, a story about ambition, and a story about a truly, spectacularly terrible party that went wrong in just about every way imaginable. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you wish, you can whisper back to me in the comments. Tell me what city you're in, and what time it is, just as you begin to drift. It's a quiet way of knowing we are all resting together, in this shared moment. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing, and together, let's allow the story to begin. You are in Rome. It is the autumn of the year 48. The air, usually thick with the dust of the city and the smell of cooking fires, carries something different today. It's the sweet, slightly fermented scent of grapes. The city is in the middle of a festival, a wine festival, and the mood is loud, chaotic, and teetering on the edge of delirium. You can hear the distant sounds of music and raucous laughter echoing through the narrow streets. Shutters are thrown open and faces, flushed with cheap wine, lean out to shout greetings or insults to their neighbors. It feels like the entire city is holding its breath, or perhaps it's just drunk. This isn't just any party. It's an official holiday, a city-wide excuse to forget the troubles of the day. But as you navigate the crowds, a strange tension hangs in the air, a question that no one dares to ask out loud. Where is the emperor? Claudius is not in Rome. He's away in Ostia, the port city, fussing over his latest grand project, dredging a new harbor. He loves engineering, you see. He finds canals and breakwaters far more interesting than court intrigue, which is, to be fair, a rather endearing quality in an emperor. But it also means the most powerful man in the world is currently staring at blueprints and arguing with architects, completely oblivious to the storm brewing back home. In his absence, the city feels like a school with the headmaster away. And the one leading the mischief is his wife, the Empress Messalina. She is the center of all power, the sun around which every ambitious senator and nervous courtier orbits. And today, she is throwing a party. You find yourself drawn towards a set of private gardens, the source of the loudest music. Here, the atmosphere shifts. This isn't the public revelry of the streets. This is the exclusive, high-stakes party of the Roman elite. Senators whose stony-faced busts will one day fill museums, or here with their robes slightly askew, their voices a little too loud. You might see a famous general, a man who has conquered provinces, struggling to spear a fig from a platter. It's a strange and fascinating fact of Roman high society that while public drunkenness was seen as a sign of weakness and a complete loss of dignity, festival days like this provided a socially sanctioned release valve. Today, a senator can stumble, and it's chalked up to festive spirit. Tomorrow, it would be a career-ending scandal. But, even with that in mind, something about this particular gathering feels different. It's too loud to desperate. The smiles don't quite reach the eyes. There's an air of performance, as if everyone is trying to convince themselves they're having a wonderful, normal time. They are celebrating the grape harvest, yes, but they are also celebrating something else, something unspoken and deeply dangerous. Historians even now can't quite agree on what was going through the Empress's mind at this moment. Was this a cold, calculated power play, a meticulously planned coup hidden beneath the guise of a drunken festival? Or was it just the ultimate, reckless act of a young woman who had been told yes her entire life, who simply could not conceive of a world where her desires had consequences? The truth, as it often does, probably lies somewhere in the murky middle. For now, all you know is that you are at the most exclusive and most dangerous party in the Roman Empire. And at the center of it all, though not yet visible to you, is a man. A man so captivating he has made an empress forget who she is. The music from the band of musicians, hired for the day and paid in wine, seems to follow you as you move deeper into the gardens. The air is thick with the scent of crushed flowers and spilled wine. People are laughing, gossiping, making deals. This is how power works in Rome, not just in the cold marble halls of the Senate, but here in the hazy, sun-dappled gardens of the elite. And you start to notice that the crowd, for all its chaos, has a certain tidal pull. People subtly drift towards one corner of the terrace, then eddy away like iron filings around a magnet. You follow their gaze, trying to find the source of this silent gravity. And then you see him, HES leaning against a column, holding a silver cup of wine he seems to have forgotten HES holding. He isn't speaking, but a small group of senators is gathered near him, as if hoping some of his effortless grace might rub off on them. He is, to put it simply, perfect, almost offensively so. He looks less like a man and more like a statue that has just decided to step down from its pedestal to see what all the fuss is about. This is Gaius Silius, HES, what the Romans would call the consul designate, which is a fancy way of saying he's already been selected to be one of the two heads of state for the next year. It's the highest office a man can achieve, the pinnacle of a Roman political career. He has everything. He comes from an old, respected family. HES a brilliant speaker, a respected politician, and to top it all off, he is universally acknowledged as the most handsome man in Rome. It's almost a cliché. You can see it in the sharp, clean line of his jaw, the intelligent look in his eyes, the way he carries himself with an unshakable confidence that stops just short of arrogance. It's a specific kind of Roman perfection you notice. He's clean-shaven, a marker of civilized status that distinguished the Roman elite from the bearded Greeks they admired in the barbarian tribes they fought. Even in this drunken festival, not a single dark curl on his head is out of place. This detail is more revealing than you might think. A Roman nobleman's appearance was a reflection of his inner discipline. To be well-groomed was to be in control, which makes the whole situation utterly baffling, because this man, this paragon of Roman virtue and success, is about to throw it all away for Messalina. The great question, the one that historians still whisper about in the footnotes of their dense academic books, is why. Why would he do this? Was he a willing partner in this mad scheme, an ambitious man who saw a shortcut to the throne? Did he look at the aging, physically awkward Emperor Claudius and then at the vibrant, powerful Messalina and decide to back the winning horse? Or was he a man caught in a trap? Messalina was not a woman you could say no to, in its own way as treasonous as accepting them too enthusiastically. Perhaps he knew from the start that this affair could only end in one of two ways. With him on the throne, or with his head on a spike. Seeing no safe way out, he may have simply decided to gamble for the ultimate prize. You watch him for a moment longer. He finally takes a sip of his wine, his eyes scanning the party. HES looking for someone. HES already given up so much for her. Not long ago, he was married to a noble and respected woman, Unius Ilene. Messalina, in a move of breathtaking audacity, demanded he divorce her. And he did. He cast aside his respectable wife, his reputation, his future, all for a series of secret encounters with the emperor's wife. He is a man who has already stepped off a cliff and is now simply waiting to see if he will land on a feather bed or on sharp rocks. Today he and Messalina have decided to force the issue. He is no longer content to be the secret lover. He is about to become the groom. And as you watch him stand there, looking like the hero of some grand epic, you realize you're witnessing the fatal flaw of a man who has never known failure. He simply cannot imagine it. Your attention drifts from Gaius Silius, the perfect statue of a man, back to the party itself. And you start to notice details that seem out of place. Amidst the chaos of the wine festival, there is a strange, focused core of activity. Servants are not just refilling wine cups, they are setting up a small, temporary altar draped in white cloth. Others are carefully placing garlands of myrtle and orange blossoms, flowers traditionally associated not with a harvest festival, but with a wedding. And in the center of the main lawn a space is being cleared. A few formal chairs are arranged, and a small, ornate table is brought out, upon which a scroll of parchment is placed with almost religious reverence. It clicks into place with a quiet, sickening lurch. This isn't just a party. This is a wedding reception. A senator standing near you, his face pale despite the wine he's been drinking, mutters to his companion. They're actually going through with it. a public marriage, while he is still in Ostia. The words hang in the air, buzzing like angry wasps. A public marriage. Messalina, Empress of Rome, wife of the divine Claudius, is going to marry Gaius Silius. Here, now, today. It's a plan so audacious, so profoundly insane, that it almost loops back around to being brilliant. Almost. It's an act that goes so far beyond mere adultery that it creates an entirely new category of crime. Adultery was a private sin, a family disgrace. This is a public declaration. In Roman law, a marriage was a surprisingly simple affair. At its core, it was about public intent. There was no grand religious ceremony required by the state. You needed witnesses, a signed contract known as the tabula in nuptialis that detailed the dowry, and a public statement of your intention to be married. That was it. By performing these acts in front of some of the most influential men in Rome, Messalina and Silius aren't just having a symbolic ceremony. They are attempting to create a legally binding union. You try to wrap your mind around the sheer nerve of it. She is not divorcing Claudius. She has no intention of quietly slipping away from her imperial duties. The plan, as you begin to piece it together from the hushed, terrified whispers around you, is for her to remain empress. She would be, in effect, the wife of two men. One, the old, distracted emperor. The other, the new, handsome prince consort. It's a declaration that the line of succession will now run through her and Silius. Any children they have would be, in their eyes, the new heirs to the throne. It's a coup d'etat disguised as a wedding. And this is where historians throw up their hands in collective confusion. What was the endgame? Tacitus, the great Roman historian who provides the most detailed account, paints it as an act of pure mad passion. He believed Messalina was so blinded by her obsession with Silius that she simply cast all caution to the wind. Others suggest a more calculated, yet still incredibly risky, political motive. Perhaps she believed Claudius was weak, easily manipulated, and that if she presented him with a completed marriage and a new political alliance, he would simply be forced to accept it. She had gotten away with everything else after all. Why would this be any different? One of the oddest, most telling details that historians have latched onto is the matter of the dowry. A formal Roman marriage required one. What dowry could Messalina possibly bring to Silius? She owned nothing in her own name, everything she had belonged to the emperor. Some sources claim that in a move of pure, theatrical absurdity, she was gifting Silius with priceless furniture, slaves, and decorations taken directly from the imperial palace. She was essentially paying her new husband with her old husband's stuff. It's a detail so bizarre. It has to be true. It reveals a mindset so detached from reality, so convinced of its own intouchability, that the normal rules of law, property, and common sense have ceased to apply. The stage is being set for an act of treason so blatant, it's almost performance art. The realization of what is about to happen spreads through the garden like a cold stain. The festive atmosphere you felt earlier has evaporated, replaced by a silent, collective anxiety. The music from the hired quartet now sounds thin and reedy, a hollow counterpoint to the pounding in your own chest. You look around at the faces of these powerful men, the masters of these powerful men, the masters of these powerful men, the masters of the Roman world, and you see not authority but fear. This is Messalina's inner circle, her court. The people who have benefited most from her power, and they are trapped. You see a prominent senator, a man known for his booming voice in the forum, now whispering into his hand, his eyes darting towards the exits. You see a wealthy knight, a man who financed his own gladiatorial games last year, suddenly looking at his wine cup, as if it contains poison. They are all here because they had to be. An invitation from the Empress is not a suggestion, it is a command. To refuse would have been a fatal insult. So they came, expecting a day of obligatory flattery and fine wine. They did not expect to be drafted as accessories to high treason. This is the deadly social mathematics of imperial Rome. Proximity to power is everything. You have to be seen at the right parties, laugh at the right jokes, praise the right people. But that same proximity can get you killed. These guests are now bound to Messalina by their very presence. If her plan succeeds, they will be rewarded for their loyalty. If it fails, well, no one wants to think about that. But they are. You can see it in every forced smile, in the way they are all trying to look casual while also subtly positioning themselves as far from that little wedding altar as possible. The great debate among those who later chronicled this day was about the complicity of this crowd. Were they all willing conspirators, a shadowy cabal plotting to overthrow a beloved emperor? Or were they simply hostages of etiquette, too cowardly to walk away? The truth is likely a messy combination of both. Some, undoubtedly, were in on the plot from the beginning, giddy with the prospect of a new regime. But many, you suspect, are like a man you see now, Lucius Titelius, HES at a time consul, a man of immense public standing but HES known for being an expert sycophant. HES a professional flatterer, and his praise for Messalina has always been laughably excessive. Now, he just looks sick. He has fallen his way into a death trap. The truly bizarre part, a detail that ancient sources note with a kind of morbid fascination, is the legalism of it all. This isn't just a symbolic gesture, it's meant to be a real, witnessed marriage. That parchment on the table is the tabula e nuptialis, the marriage contract. Under Roman law, the signatures of witnesses were a sacred and binding act. To witness a document was to stake your reputation, your name, and your honor on its validity. To step forward and sign a document declaring that the Empress is marrying another man, it's a permanent record of their treason. There will be no plausible deniability. No, I was just there for the wine. Their names will be on that scroll written in their own hands, for all to see. You see one of Messalina's closest confidantes, a woman with sharp eyes and a shark-like smile, moving through the crowd, her hand resting a little too long on the arms of the most powerful senators. She's just reminding them of their friendship with the Empress, reminding them of all the favors they've received. It's a velvet-gloved threat, a reminder that they are already too deep in this to back out now. The air is thick with unspoken calculations. Every guest is mentally weighing the odds, trying to figure out if the risk of execution is greater than the risk of offending the woman who, for this one sun-drenched, terrifying afternoon, holds all their lives in her hands. The party has become a courtroom, and they are all about to be called as witnesses against themselves. And just as that thought forms, the scene dissolves. The scent of flowers and wine is swept away by a sharp, clean gust of salt spray. The sound of tense whispers and reedy music is replaced by the rhythmic crash of waves against stone and the distant, rhythmic clang of hammers. You are no longer in a garden. You are 20 miles away in the bustling, windswept port of Ostia. The sun here feels different. It's not the dappled, hazy light of a private party. It's a half-bright glare reflecting off the whitecaps of the Tyrrhenian Sea. You are standing on a half-finished pier, surrounded by the organized chaos of the largest engineering project of the decade. Giant wooden cranes pivot slowly, lifting massive blocks of travertine. Legions of workers, their bodies tanned and sinewy, move with a practiced rhythm, their shouted commands nearly lost in the sea wind. This is the new port of Claudius, a project of breathtaking ambition designed to solve Rome's single greatest problem, hunger. The grain ships that feed the capital are constantly at the mercy of storms, often sinking within sight of the city. This new harbor, with its massive breakwaters, is meant to tame the sea itself. And there, in the middle of it all, is the Emperor. HES not what you might expect. HES not sitting on a golden throne, observing from a distance. HES right there in the thick of it, a roll of blueprints clutched in one hand, gesturing excitedly with the other. He is a man in his late 50s, and he carries the weight of his family's brutal history on his stooped shoulders. He walks with a slight limp, a result of childhood illness. When he gets excited, as he is now, he has a tendency to stammer and his head wobbles a bit. He is, by all accounts, an emperor who looks profoundly unimperial. HES less a divine ruler and more an over-enthusiastic project manager who has just been given an unlimited budget. You watch as he argues with his chief engineer, pointing at the plans, then at the sea, then back at the plans. HES completely absorbed, a man in his element. This is color at heart, A man who would rather be in a library reading history books he wrote several himself than dealing with the viper's nest of the Roman court. The clean, logical problems of engineering, of cause and effect, of stone and water, are a welcome refuge from the unpredictable world of human ambition. Historians still argue about the real Claudius. Was he the bumbling fool some ancient writers made him out to be, a man who stumbled into power by hiding behind a curtain? Or was that an act, a carefully constructed mask of incompetence that allowed him to survive the lethal reigns of his predecessors, Tiberius and Caligula? The truth is, he was a remarkably effective administrator. He reformed the legal system, conquered Britain, and right here, at Ostia, he was solving a problem that had plagued Rome for centuries. And he was doing it with a rather peculiar brand of genius. One of the stranger facts of this project is the plan for the lighthouse that would mark the harbor's entrance. To create its foundation, Claudius had ordered a massive, purpose-built ship, originally used by the mad Emperor Caligula to transport a giant obelisk from Egypt, to be sailed into position and then deliberately filled with stones and sunk. It was a bizarre, audacious, and ultimately successful piece of engineering. Sinking a ship on purpose to build something new, it's a perfect metaphor for his reign. But today, as he delights in the practicalities of his harbor, he is blind to the storm gathering back home. He is ensuring the future of Rome's grain supply, unaware that his own lineage is being threatened. He is building a safe haven for ships, oblivious to the fact that his own house is being torn apart by a hurricane of his wife's making. He is solving the problem of bread. He has no idea he is about to face the problem of treason. A lone rider, whipping his horse into a lather, is already on the road from Rome. The real world, the world Claudius tries so hard to avoid, is about to come crashing down on him. The clang of hammers in sunny Ostia fades, the scent of salt air dissolves, and you find yourself once again back in the gardens in Rome. It is the morning of the ceremony. The sun is higher now, but it brings no clarity, only a sickly, humid heat that makes the whole scene feel feverish and unreal. The party, which seems to have been going on all night, has now reached a strange, expectant lull, leaving behind a residue of stale wine and quiet desperation. This is not how imperial occasions are supposed to feel. A state event should begin with solemn dignity, with processions and prayers. This feels more like the morning after a forbidden gathering, where the participants are too tired to go home but too scared to stay. You see a small group of senators huddled together, not speaking, just staring into their wine cups. They look like men who have made a terrible mistake and are now simply waiting for the consequences to arrive. In a small private chamber just off the main garden, Gaius Silius is preparing. He is not alone. He is attended by his most trusted slaves, who move with a quiet, efficient nervousness. You watch as one anoints his skin with scented oil, and another uses a strigil, a curved metal tool, to scrape the excess oil and dirt from his body. This was the Roman version of a shower, a daily ritual for the elite that was both cleansing and a status symbol. It's a strangely intimate moment. Who is about to attempt to seize control of an empire is being scraped clean like a piece of pottery. There is a vulnerability to him now that was absent before. But then, the final garment is brought out. It is a toga, but not just any toga. It is the toga praetextae, a brilliant white robe with a thick purple stripe along its border. This was not a fashion choice. The toga praetextae was a symbol of office, worn only by high-ranking magistrates and certain priests. For Silius, the consul designate, wearing it would normally be his right. But wearing it today, at this ceremony, transforms its meaning entirely. He is not dressing as a private citizen getting married. He is dressing as a ruler, as a man assuming power. It's the equivalent of showing up to a clandestine meeting wearing a crown. Historians have often wondered about Silius's state of mind on this morning. Was this his idea? Did he believe that this bold visual statement would intimidate his opponents and rally his supporters? Or was he merely a pawn in Messalina's grand, reckless theater? Some believe he was a man fully committed to the coup, a willing, ambitious partner. Others portray him as a man swept up in events beyond his control, a man so captivated by the Empress, that he simply did as he was told, putting on the ceremonial robe like an actor putting on a costume, hoping the role would somehow become real if he just played the part convincingly enough. You watch as his slaves carefully drape the heavy wool over his shoulder, the famous folds of the toga arranged just so. When they are finished, he stands there, a perfect image of Roman authority. The vulnerability you saw a moment ago is gone, replaced by a stony resolve. He looks in a polished bronze mirror, and for a second, you see him not as a doomed lover, but as he must see himself. The new man in charge, the future of Rome. He has put on the uniform of power. He is a man who has presumably just had the most stressful morning routine of his life, but his face betrays nothing. He is ready. He walks from the chamber out onto the terrace, and a hush falls over the assembled guests. The groom has arrived. The stage is set. All that is missing is the bride. A ripple of movement goes through the crowd. All eyes turn towards the archway leading from the main villa into the gardens. The musicians, who had been playing a lethargic, meandering tune, suddenly switch to something more dramatic. It's showtime. Empress Messalina. But you have to blink and look again. Because this is not the empress you've seen depicted in official statues, the dignified, stern mother of the air. The woman who enters the garden is dressed for a bacchanal, a wild, ecstatic festival of the wine god Bacchus. Her dark hair, usually pinned up in a severe and complicated imperial style, is loose, tumbling over her shoulders, with sprigs of ivy and grapevine leaves woven into it. Her cheeks are flushed, either with wine or excitement, and her eyes have a manic, glittering brightness. Her dress is even more shocking. Instead of the traditional, modest stole of a Roman matron, she's wearing something that looks more like the costume of a Maenad, one of the mythical female followers of Bacchus. It's a flowing, almost translucent silk garment, cinched high under her bust, that moves with a dancer's freedom. And on her feet, instead of elegant sandals, she wears a pair of an empress. This is not the attire of an empress. This is the costume of a cult initiate, a woman surrendering to ecstatic frenzy. And she's carrying a Thyrs, a long staff wrapped in ivy and topped with a pinnacone. This was the signature sacred object of the Bacchisi cult, a symbol of pleasure, fertility, and divine madness. She brandishes it not like a scepter, but like a party prop, tapping it playfully on the shoulders of the senators she passes, who flinch as if touched by a hot iron. This entire performance is a calculated and deeply unsettling choice. She is deliberately casting aside the symbols of her imperial status and embracing the symbols of chaos and abandon. Why, the academic debate on this is fascinating. Some scholars argue it was a brilliant, if blasphemous, piece of political theatre. The cult of Bacchus was incredibly popular with the common people of Rome. By appearing as a Maenad, was she trying to signal that her new reign would be one of liberation and popular appeal, a break from the stiff formality of Claudius's court? Was she, in essence, running a populist campaign in the middle of her own wedding? Then there's the stranger, more bizarre tidbit. Some sources claim she had a small, theatrical prop with her, a gilded, artificial panther. The panther, a creature that supposedly drew Bacchus's chariot, was a key symbol of the cult. The idea of the Empress of Rome entering her illegal wedding with a fake panther in tow is almost too ridiculous to be true, yet it speaks volumes about the surreal, theatrical nature of the day. It wasn't just a political act, it was a piece of avant-garde performance art, and the audience had no idea how to react. As she moves through the garden, a group of her ladies in waiting follows, also dressed in similar Bacchisi attire. They begin to sing and dance around her, a slow swaying, almost hypnotic movement. The scene is utterly surreal. You are in the heart of Rome, the center of law and order, watching the most powerful woman in the world play act a scene from a forbidden mystery cult, all as a prelude to committing high treason. She reaches the cleared space where Gaius Silius is waiting. He stands rigid in his formal toga, a stark contrast to her wild appearance, the statue in the storm. He looks at her, and his mask of calm composure seems to crack for just a moment. You can't tell if it's adoration or pure terror. She smiles at him, a wide, reckless smile, and takes his hand. The time for whispers and preparations is over. The ceremony is about to begin. A man steps forward, unrolling the parchment you saw earlier. He is a public official of some kind, a notary perhaps, his face a perfect mask of professional indifference, as if he is merely witnessing a routine land sailing, not the political suicide of everyone in his immediate vicinity. He holds the scroll flat on the ornate table. This is it, the tabula e nuptiales, the marriage contract. A hush falls over the garden. The manic energy of Messalina's entrance has dissipated, leaving a heavy, silent dread in its wake. Even the birds seem to have stopped singing. All you can hear is the faint rustle of the parchment in the still, humid air. Silius is the first to act. With a steady hand he picks up a stylus. He leans over the table, his perfect posture unbroken, and signs his name. The scratch of the metal tip on the stiff parchment sounds unnaturally loud in the silence. Gaius Silius. His name, a mark of honor and distinction for generations, is now evidence. Exhibit A in a trial that hasn't even started yet. Then it's Messalina's turn. Her movements still theatrical and a little too large. She signs her name with a flourish. Valeria Messalina. She doesn't just sign it, she almost carves it into the document, a final, defiant act of will. There. It is done. The two principal actors have signed their own death warrants. Now comes the truly terrible part. The notary turns to the assembled guests. He looks directly at Lucius Vitellius, the sycophant, the man you saw looking ill earlier. He is the highest-ranking senator present, and protocol demands he be the first witness. Vitellius freezes. You can see the blood drain from his face. For a moment, you think he might make a stand, shout treason, and run for his life. He could be a hero. He could be the one man who stood up to a tyrant. But then you see his shoulders slump in a gesture of utter defeat. He shuffles forward, a man walking to his own execution. He takes the stylus. His hand is shaking so badly he can barely hold it. He scribbles a messy, almost illegible signature onto the document and then backs away, his eyes fixed on the ground, as if he cannot bear to look at what he has done. This is the moment that breaks the dam. Once the most respected man has signed, the rest follow like sheep. One by one, the most powerful men in Rome step forward to add their names to the treasonous contract. A famous general, a revered priest, a judge known for his unbending commitment to the law. Each signature is a small, quiet act of surrender. Historians, particularly Tacitus, are merciless in their judgment of these men. He portrays them as cowards, flatterers, and fools, men who valued their immediate comfort over their honor and their lives. The great what-if of this story will always be, what if they had said no? What if that first man, Vitellius, had refused? The entire plot might have collapsed right there. But he didn't. One of the fascinating and slightly strange aspects of Roman legal documents was the use of seals. After signing, each witness would press their personal signet ring into a small dab of hot wax on the document. This was their unique, unforgettable mark, far more important than the signature itself. It was the ancient equivalent of a thumbprint and a notarized stamp rolled into one. So these men are not just writing their names, they are pressing their family's honor, their very identity, into the evidence. They are literally sealing their fate. You can almost smell the faint scent of melting beeswax, a smell that, for these men, will forever be associated with terror. The last witness signs. The notary carefully rolls up the scroll, ties it with a ribbon, and hands it to Silius. It's done. It's official. At least in this garden. It is. Messalina claps her hands like a delighted child who has just gotten her way. She grabs the wine-filled chalice from the table, holds it high, and shouts a toast. The spell of silence is broken. The party is back on. And now, it's going to get much, much worse. The moment the scroll is tied, the tension that has gripped the garden for the last hour snaps. But it doesn't dissolve into relief. It explodes into a kind of forced, hysterical mania. A signal is given, and a small army of servants swarms into the garden, carrying enormous platters of food and refiling every empty wine cup. The musicians launch into a frantic, pounding rhythm. This is no longer a wedding reception. It has become a desperate attempt to drown out the reality of what just happened. And then the centerpiece of the celebration is revealed. Several large, shallow wooden vats are carried into the center of the lawn. They are filled to the brim with ripe, purple grapes. This is a vin demier, a ritual reenactment of the grape harvest. It was a common feature of autumn festivals, a symbol of abundance and divine favor, but Messalina, as always, is taking it to a theatrical and scandalous extreme. She kicks off her fawn skin boots, her bare feet white against the green grass. With a whoop of delight, she climbs into one of the vats and begins to stomp on the grapes, her silk dress immediately stained with the dark juice. She beckons to her ladies-in-waiting, who, with varying degrees of enthusiasm, join her. Soon the vats are filled with laughing, shrieking women, lifting their stained tunics high as they crush the fruit underfoot. This is the image that would be seared into the memory of Rome, the detail that historians would later use to epitomize the depravity of the day. It was a shocking breach of decorum for noble women, the wives and daughters of senators, to engage in what was essentially manual labor, and to do it in public, their legs bared, was scandalous. It was a deliberate, joyful plunge into what a proper Roman would see as utter chaos. Gaius Silius, ever the Stoic, watches from the side, a faint, unreadable smile on his face. He does not join in. He is still in his pristine, purple-bordered toga, an island of sobriety in a sea of drunken revelry. He seems to understand the importance of maintaining his dignity, of looking like a ruler, even as his new bride leads a grape-stomping frenzy. The debate about this specific moment enters on its symbolism. Was Messalina just a drunk young woman having a good time? Or was this, too, a calculated political act? Stomping the grapes was a deeply traditional, rustic activity associated with the common people and the fertility of the Italian land. By leading the Vendemiae, Messalina was again, as with her Bacchus costume, aligning herself with a more populist of the people image. She was no longer the aloof empress in the palace, but the joyful, fertile mother of a new, more vibrant Rome. It was a performance of authenticity, a carefully staged piece of political theater designed to look like a spontaneous outburst of joy. A slightly odd and often overlooked detail of these festivals was the presence of small, portable wine presses. After the initial stomping, the pulpy mess of grapes, skins, and juice, known as must, would be scooped into a press. Two men would then turn a large wooden screw, squeezing out the last of the juice. You see one in action now. It's a surprisingly sophisticated device for the ancient world, a testament to Roman engineering even in the pursuit of pleasure. And as the dark juice flows into a clay amphora, you realize you're watching a metaphor for the whole day. These people are being put under immense pressure. And what is being squeezed out is not sweet wine, but pure undue treason. The party grows wilder. People are dancing, singing off-key, their faces smeared with grape juice. They look like the survivors of some strange, colorful battle. They are all desperately trying to believe in the reality they've just created, to make the sign contract and the grape-stomping festival feel more real than the absent, angry emperor. But the sun is beginning to dip lower in the sky. The afternoon is fading, and with the approaching shadows comes the cold, creeping feeling that this cannot last. In the midst of the escalating chaos, something strange happens. A sudden commotion erupts from the edge of the gardens near the wilder, uncultivated woods that border the estate. The music falters. The dancers stop. Everyone turns to look. A large, dark shape has burst from the trees. It's a wild boar, its coarse dark hair bristling, its snorts red with panic or fury. It snorts, stamping the ground, its curved tusks glinting in the afternoon sun. For a moment there is a stunned silence. A wild boar in a private garden in the middle of Rome is not a common sight. It's a creature of the deep forests, of the wild, untamed world that exists outside the city's walls. Its presence here feels unnatural, a violation. Then the drunken party guests, their courage fueled by wine, react. A few men grab whatever is at hand, a heavy candlestick, a decorative spear from a statue display, and begin to close in on the animal. The boar, cornered and terrified, lets out a guttural squeal and charges. It plows through a table laden with food, sending platters of figs and honey cakes scattering across the lawn. It slams into one of the wine vats, nearly tipping it over, before crashing back into the woods from which it came. The entire incident is over in less than a minute. It leaves behind a trail of minor destruction and a profound sense of unease. The guests start laughing again, a little too loudly, trying to turn the event into a funny anecdote, a thrilling interruption to their festivities. "Did you see the size of that thing?" one senator exclaims, slapping his friend on the back. But the laughter is brittle. The mood has been irrevocably broken, because everyone in that garden understands the language of omens. To the modern mind, it's just a stray animal, a weird, random event. But to a Roman, it was a message from the gods. The world was a fabric of divine signs, and for those with the eyes to see, the future was constantly being written in the flight of birds, the patterns in lightning, or the sudden appearance of a wild animal. And this particular omen was not a good one. The wild boar was a creature associated with brute, untamed violence. It was a symbol of nature's fury, of chaos breaking through the carefully constructed order of human society. For it to appear at a wedding, an event meant to create a new sacred order, was a sign of cosmic disapproval. It was, in the bluntest possible terms, the gods saying this is a terrible idea. Roman history is filled with stories of such portents. Famously, just before the assassination of Julius Caesar, his horses were said to have wept, and strange birds were seen in the forum. Whether these things actually happened is a matter of endless debate among historians. Did a boar really crash Messalina's wedding party? Or was it a detail invented later by chroniclers like Tacitus and Suetonius to add a sense of supernatural foreshadowing to the story? It's a classic case where history and storytelling become impossible to separate. There is, however, a more practical, less mystical interpretation that some historians favor. Rome in the 1st century AD was a sprawling city, but it was not the continuous urban landscape we know today. It was a patchwork of dense neighborhoods interspersed with large private estates, agricultural land, and significant stretches of park and woodland. The famous gardens of Lucullus, where Messalina would later be taken, were known to be so vast they contained areas of near wilderness. It is entirely plausible that a wild boar, its habitat disturbed, could have wandered into a suburban garden. But plausibility doesn't matter. Perception does. For the men who had just signed their names to that scroll, the meaning was clear. The universe had just sent them a warning. The wine suddenly tastes sour. The music sounds jarring. The joyful abandon of a moment now feels like a foolish, childish game. They are no longer celebrating the new beginning. They are waiting for the end. And you have the distinct feeling that it is coming for them, as fast as a horse can gallop from the port of Ostia. The scene in the Roman garden, now chilled by the memory of the boar, dissolves like mist. You are back in Ostia, back in the bright, windswept world of engineering and imperial oversight. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows from the stacks of marble and the skeletons of new warehouses. Emperor Claudius has just finished a long and satisfying day of inspecting drainage ditches. He is sitting in his temporary field headquarters, a surprisingly modest tent, enjoying a simple meal of bread, cheese, and watered-down wine with his closest advisors. He is in a good mood. The work is progressing ahead of schedule. He feels useful, productive. He is, for a moment, happy, and that is when you see him. A speck on the horizon, growing rapidly larger. A single rider, his horse lathered in sweat, its flanks heaving. He is not moving at the pace of a messenger carrying routine dispatches. He is riding as if the city behind him is on fire. The guards at the edge of the camp move to intercept him, but he shouts something, a name, a password, and they let him through. He doesn't slow down until he reaches the emperor's tent, pulling his horse to a skidding halt and practically falling from the saddle. He is a man you recognize from Messalina's party, one of the guests. But the arrogant, wine-flushed courtier from this morning is gone. This man is wild-eyed with terror, his clothes are disheveled, and he is gasping for breath. He stumbles into the emperor's tent, falls to his knees, and begins to babble. The words come out in a frantic, incoherent rush. Empress, silly us, wedding, treason, contract. At first, Claudius doesn't understand. He looks at the man with a kind of detached, scholarly curiosity, as if he is a strange new species of insect. He asks him to slow down, to speak clearly. The man takes a gulp of air and tries again, this time laying out the whole sordid, insane story. The secret affair, the plan, the public ceremony in the garden, the signing of the marriage contract. Silence. The emperor of the Roman world, the man who commands 25 legions, who rules from Britain to Egypt, just stares. His face, usually a mask of mild, distractible confusion, goes completely blank. The piece of bread in his hand stops halfway to his mouth. He is not sad. He is for a long, terrifying moment, simply offline. The reality of what he is being told is so monstrous, so far outside the bounds of anything he could have conceived, that his mind has simply refused to process. This moment of imperial paralysis is one of the most debated aspects of the entire affair. Ancient sources like Tacitus portray Claudius as weak and indecisive, a man so terrified of his wife that he was incapable of acting against her. More modern interpretations suggest something else, that he was a man in a state of profound psychological shock. He wasn't just an emperor betrayed, he was a husband. A mother at least trusted his wife, the mother of his children. To be told that she had not just been unfaithful, but had attempted to publicly, unlegally replace him while he was away on business. It was a betrayal of an almost cosmic scale. A strange and pathetic detail from the historical accounts is that Claudius's first instinct was denial. He turned to his advisors, the men eating with him, and asked them with a genuine, stammering confusion if he was still the emperor. He asked, "Is Silius now a private citizen?" It's a heartbreaking naive question. He is trying to find a version of events where this is all Somber's a misstanding. Perhaps it was a joke, a piece of festival theatre that went too far. His mind is scrambling for any explanation, any at all, that is less devastating than the truth. But the messenger is not finished. He brings with him not just the story, but the names of the witnesses. Lucius Vitellius, the great general, the high priest. One by one, he names the emperor's friends, his allies, the men he trusted to run his government. And with each name, the fantasy of a simple misunderstanding dies. This was not a joke. This was a conspiracy. The news has reached Ostia. The party in Rome is officially over. As the emperor sits frozen in a state of stunned disbelief, the atmosphere in the tent shifts. 3 other men are at the table, and they are not stunned. They are not confused. You watch as a silent, almost telepathic communication passes between them. They exchange a single loaded glance. It's a look of shared fear, calculation, and cold, ruthless opportunity. The emperor may be paralyzed, but the real power in the room has just been activated. You are looking at the 3 most powerful men in the Roman Empire who are not the emperor, and none of them are senators. None of them come from noble families. They are Claudius's freedmen, his personal secretaries, Narcissus, Pallas, and Callistus. To understand what happens next, you have to understand what a freedman was. In Roman society, they occupied a strange and contradictory space. They were former slaves, men who had, through talent or favor, earned their freedom from a powerful master. They were forever marked by this past. They could never hold the highest public offices, but they were also uniquely positioned. They were insiders bound by a deep, personal loyalty to their former master, who was now their patron. They ran the emperor's private affairs, managed his finances, and controlled access to him. They were the gatekeepers, and in Claudius's reign, they turned this administrative role into a shadow government. You look at each of them in turn. There is Callistus, the secretary for petitions and legal inquiries. He is a master of the law, a man who knows every loophole and has a memory like a steel trap. Then there is Pallas, the man in charge of the imperial treasury. He is, by some accounts, one of the wealthiest men in the world, his fortune built on his control of the state's finances. He is arrogant, ambitious, and fantastically corrupt. And then there is the most important man in the room, the one who takes charge, Narcissus. He is the abepistolis, the secretary for correspondence. He handles all of the emperor's letters, which means he controls the flow of information to and from the heart of power. He is decisive, intelligent, and utterly ruthless. While the other two were known for their greed, Narcissus was feared for his loyalty to Claudius, a loyalty that was inseparable from his own survival. These three men have one thing in common. They are hated by the traditional Roman aristocracy. The senators, the men of old families, despise them. They see them as upstarts, as former property who now wield more power than they do. And Messalina, who came from one of the oldest families of all, hated them most of all. Hated them most of all. She saw them as rivals for the emperor's ear, and she made no secret of her intention to destroy them. This is the cold, hard calculus of the moment. As Narcissus looks at the babbling messenger and the frozen emperor, he is not just thinking about the stability of the state. He is thinking about his own neck. He knows with absolute certainty that if Messalina survives this, if Claudius finds it in his heart to forgive her, and Claudius is a man famous for his strange leniency, her first act will be to demand the heads of the freedmen who brought him the bad news. They have a very narrow window in which to act. They must ensure Messalina is eliminated before Claudius has a chance to soften. For them, this isn't about justice or the rule of law. It's a preemptive strike. A strange little detail that modern historians love to point out is the sheer novelty of this freedman cabinet. Previous emperors had used senators and knights to run their administration. Claudius's reliance on these former slaves was seen as a sign of his weakness and eccentricity. But some argue it was a stroke of genius. The freedmen had no power base of their own, no legions or ancient family name to fall back on. Their power, their lives, their very life, depended entirely on the survival and success of the emperor. They were, in theory, the most loyal servants he could possibly have. Tonight, that theory is about to be put to the ultimate test. Narcissus steps forward. He ignores the messenger. He ignores the messenger. He speaks directly to the emperor, his voice calm and firm, cutting through the fog of shock. The time for indecision is over. Narcissus' palace and Claudius huddle together, their backs to the emperor, creating a small, private bubble of conspiracy within the tent. They speak in low, urgent tones, their words too quiet for you to catch, but their intent is clear. This is a moment of frantic, high-stakes strategizing. They are, in effect, a crisis committee, a board of directors deciding the fate of the company, while the CEO is having a nervous breakdown. You can almost see the gears turning in their minds. Their problem is twofold. First, they need to eliminate Messalina and Silius. That part is relatively straightforward. A word to the commander of the Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers who serve as the emperor's personal bodyguards, and the whole conspiracy can be crushed within hours. The second problem is far more difficult. The emperor is the weak link in their plan. He is famously unpredictable. More worryingly, he has a history of being completely enthralled by Messalina. She has always been able to talk her way back into his good graces, to convince him that every rumor was a lie, every accusation a plot by her enemies. Narcissus knows that if Messalina gets even 5 minutes alone with Claudius, she might be able to turn the tables. She could convince him that this whole wedding was an elaborate joke, or, even more audaciously, that they, the freedmen, had fabricated the entire story to frame her, and if that happened, they would be the ones facing the executioner's sword. This is their gamble. They must orchestrate the arrest and execution of the Empress of Rome without a clear, direct, and unwavering order from the emperor himself. They need to create a situation where the outcome is inevitable before Claudius can find an opportunity to change his mind. It is a terrifyingly risky move. They are walking a tightrope over a canyon. On one side is Messalina's vengeance. On the other is a charge of treason for acting without imperial authority. A fascinating debate among classicists is whether the freedmen were acting solely out of self-preservation, or if they also had a genuine, if cynical, sense of duty to the state. Did they see Messalina as a genuine threat to the stability of the empire? A woman whose reckless behavior was damaging the imperial family and creating dangerous political uncertainty? Or was it all just a cold-blooded calculation to save their own skins? The Roman historian Tacitus paints them as self-serving villains, but it's possible to see their actions in a different light. They were perhaps the only ones in the room pragmatic enough to see the danger and ruthless enough to deal with it. They were the state's immune system, and they had just detected a deadly infection. You watch as Pallas and Claudius seem to hesitate. The plan is too bold, the risks too high. They suggest caution, a more measured approach. Maybe they should just arrest Silius and the other conspirators, and then let the emperor decide what to do about his wife. But Narcissus is having none of it. He understands the psychology of Claudius better than anyone. He knows that the emperor, if left towards the path of least resistance, which in this case means forgiveness, Narcissus argues, his voice still a low whisper, that this needs to be a clean cut, a surgical removal of the tumor before it can spread. There's a curious little detail in the historical accounts about the Praetorian Guard at this time. Their commander or prefect was a man named Geta, and Geta was known to be completely loyal to Messalina. He was her man. Narcissus realizes, in a flash of insight, that Geta cannot be trusted with this task. He would likely stall, or worse, send a warning to the Empress. The first move must be to sideline Geta. It's a brilliant, three-dimensional chess move. They must first neutralize her protector. Their gamble just got even more complicated. But Narcissus has made his decision. He turns away from the other two freedmen, his face set like stone. He is about to stake everything, his life, his fortune, the future of the empire, on his ability to manipulate one stunned, heartbroken old man. Narcissus approaches the emperor, moving with a calm, deliberate confidence that is entirely feigned. Inside, his mind must be racing, but on the outside, he is a pillar of strength, the loyal servant ready to guide his master through the stall. Claudius is still sitting at the table, staring into the middle distance, occasionally muttering the question that has become his mantra. Do I still the emperor? This is the moment. Narcissus knows he cannot just present the facts. The facts are too overwhelming, too paralyzing. He needs to frame the situation in a way that forces Claudius to act, to reclaim his own authority. He launches into a carefully crafted performance of righteous indignation and loyal panic. My Lord Caesar, he begins, his voice ringing with a sincerity that he has practiced for years. Your household has been defiled. Your bed has been dishonored. The very state is threatened. He is not speaking of a private betrayal. He is speaking of a national crisis. He is making it about Claudius's role, not his feelings. He then, in a move of pure psychological genius, appears to confess his own guilt. I have been too lenient, he says, his voice choked with emotion. We have allowed her, indiscretions, to go unchecked, hoping she would see the error of her ways. But this is no mere affair. This is a public seizure of power. Silius intends to take everything from you. By admitting his own failure, Narcissus is doing two things. First, he's creating a sense of shared responsibility, making Claudius feel less alone in his victimhood. Second, he is subtly stoking the emperor's anger, directing it away from the painful, personal betrayal and towards the public, political threat. He's not just a wronged husband. He's an emperor whose authority has been mocked. And now for the masterstroke. Narcissus knows about Geta, the Praetorian prefect loyal to Messalina. He tells Claudius, we cannot be sure of the guard. Their loyalty may be compromised. This is designed to inject a shot of pure fear into the emperor's heart. The Praetorian Guard were the kingmakers and king-breakers of Rome. They had murdered the previous emperor, Caligula, and it was they who had found Claudius hiding behind a curtain and declared him emperor. The thought that they might now be turning against him is his deepest, most primal fear. You must act, Caesar, Narcissus presses. You must go to the Praetorian camp yourself. You must show them that you are still their commander. Secure them that you are still their commander. And give me, just for this one day, command of the guard. Let me be your sword. This is the crux of the entire plan. He is asking for temporary command of the emperor's personal army. It's an audacious request, one that in any other circumstance would be seen as a power grab, but he frames it as an act of selfless service. He is not seizing power, he is offering to wield it on the emperor's behalf, to do the dirty work that Claudius is too shocked to do himself. Historians still marvel at the brilliance of this manipulation. Narcissus is playing on all of Claudius's known weaknesses. His indecisiveness, his paranoia about the Praetorians, and his tendency to delegate difficult tasks. He has presented the emperor with a simple, clear course of action that makes him feel like he is taking charge, when in reality, he is surrendering all control to his freedmen. Claudius finally looks up. The fog of confusion in his eyes is beginning to clear, replaced by a flicker of fear and anger. He looks at Narcissus, this man who has served him for years, who understands his mind better than anyone. He nods, a single, almost imperceptible nod. But it is enough. Narcissus has his authority. He immediately turns and barks orders. "Prepare the emperor's carriage. We ride for Rome." "Summon the senior tribunes. They will answer to me now." He is no longer a secretary. For all intents and purposes, the acting ruler of the Roman Empire. The coup against Claudius has failed. The counter-coup, led by a former slave, has just begun. The imperial camp at Ostia dissolves into a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Orders are shouted, torches are lit against the deepening twilight, and a sense of grim urgency replaces the day's leisurely pace. The emperor's carriage is brought forward. It's not the ornate, gilded litter of state procession in Rome. This is a practical, sturdy traveling carriage, built for speed and endurance on the rough Roman roads. It's a vehicle designed for a ruler on the move, a general heading to the front lines. Claudius is helped into the carriage by his servants. He moves like a man in a dream, his face pale and slack. Narcissus climbs in and sits opposite him, his posture rigid, his eyes alert. The other two freedmen, Pallas and Callistus, get in as well, their faces tight with anxiety. They are all in this together now, their fates slashed to the same runaway chariot. A small, elite detachment of Praetorian guards, men whose loyalty Narcissus trusts, forms up around the carriage, and the heavy vehicle lurches forward, beginning the 20-mile journey back to the city. The ride is a masterpiece of silent, psychological tension. The carriage rattles and sways on the stone-paved Via Ostiensis, the main road connecting the port to the capital. Inside, no one speaks. The only sounds are the rhythmic clatter of the wheels, the jingle of the harness, and the steady, thudding hooves of the horses. It's a claustrophobic, swaying box of fear. You are inside that carriage, a silent observer of the four most powerful men in the empire. Claudius slumps in his corner, staring out at the darkening landscape but seeing nothing. He is still lost in his own private world of shock and betrayal. Pallas and Callistus sit stiffly, avoiding eye contact with each other, each lost in his own calculations of risk and reward. But your attention is fixed on Narcissus. He is the only one who seems truly present. He is a coiled spring, his mind racing ahead, planning the next move, and the one after that. His primary concern is still Claudius. The emperor's silence is unnerving. Narcissus needs him angry, decisive. This silent, melancholic state is dangerous. What if, on this long, dark ride, the emperor's thoughts turn from anger to pity? What if he starts to remember the good times with his wife, the mother of his children, Britannicus and Octavia? What if he decides by the time they reach Rome that a quiet divorce is better than a bloody execution? To counter this, Narcissus employs a subtle but cruel tactic. He begins to talk. Not to the emperor but to the other freedmen, as if Claudius isn't even there. He starts to recount, in lurid detail, all of Messalina's past scandals. He brings up the rumors of her other lovers, the stories of her greed, the way she sold public offices and judicial verdicts to the highest bidder. He paints a picture of a woman not just unfaithful, but rapacious and corrupt, a cancer on the state. It's a monologue of strategic poison dripped slowly into the emperor's ear, designed to kill any lingering seeds of affection. This is a detail that the Roman historian Tacitus provides, and it's a chilling insight into Narcissus's methods. He's not just managing a crisis, he's actively shaping the emperor's reality, curating a narrative of absolute guilt that leaves no room for pardon. The question of whether all these stories were true is one that academics still wrestle with. Messalina was almost certainly no saint, but the sheer scale of the depravity attributed to her by ancient authors often feels, like a smear campaign. Was Narcissus telling the truth, or was he just using every weapon in his arsenal to ensure the emperor's resolve didn't crumble before they reached the city gates? In this swaying carriage, truth is less important than effect. The carriage passes the halfway mark. Through the window, you can see the first flickering lights of the Roman suburbs. The journey is almost over. The fate of an empress, a handsome senator, and a whole circle of Rome's elite is being decided in this dark, rattling box, not by a debate or a trial, but by the whispers of a former slave into the ear of a broken man. And just as the imperial carriage passes the 5th milestone from Rome, the scene shifts. The dark, swaying intimacy of the emperor's journey is gone, and you are plunged back into the lurid, wine-soaked atmosphere of the party. The sun has set. The garden is now lit by the flickering, smoky light of dozens of torches which cast long dancing shadows that make the drunken revelers look like ghostly apparitions. The party has reached its final, desperate stage. The forced gaiety has curdled into something ugly. Arguments are breaking out. A senator, his face slick with sweat and wine, is weeping openly in a corner. The great stomping has ended, and Messalina, her dress stained a dark purple, is holding court, reclining on a couch like a conquering queen. Gaius Silius stands beside her, his perfect toga now slightly askew, his face flushed. They are surrounded by the most committed, or perhaps most foolish, of their supporters, who are laughing too loudly at the empress's jokes. They are all trapped in a bubble of self-delusion. They have spent the entire day in this garden, cut off from the outside world. In here, their plan is a brilliant success. Messalina and Silius are the new power couple. The contract is signed. The most important men in Rome are their witnesses. They have no idea that a messenger has reached Ostia. They have no idea that the emperor knows. They have no idea that a carriage, bearing the full vengeful weight of the state, is thundering towards them in the darkness. The first sign that something is wrong is a sound that doesn't belong at a party. It's the rhythmic, metallic tramp of marching feet. Caligai, the heavy, hobnail-led sandals of Roman soldiers, striking the stone pavement in perfect unison. The music stops. The laughter dies. Everyone freezes, their wine cups halfway to their lips. They turn towards the main gate of the garden. The gate bursts open, not with a gentle swing, but with a violent crash. And standing there, framed by the darkness, are not party crashers, but soldiers. A full manipula of the Praetorian Guard, their helmets and breastplates gleaming in the torchlight, their short, sharp-pointed swords, the gladii still sheathed at their sides. They are led by a tribune, an officer of high rank, his face a grim, unreadable mask. He does not need to. His presence is enough. The soldiers fan out, forming a silent, disciplined perimeter, their studded shields held ready. They move with a terrifying efficiency, cutting off all exits. The drunken, chaotic party has suddenly become a neat, orderly trap. The transformation of the guests is instantaneous and absolute. The arrogance, the bravado, the drunken confidence, it all evaporates, replaced by a primal animal fear. A senator who just moments ago was boasting about his clench to the new regime now seems to be trying to shrink, to become invisible. People who were fawning over Messalina a minute ago are now subtly edging away from her, trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the two people at the center of the storm. This scene is a stark reminder of where true power resided in Rome. It wasn't in the bloodlines of old families or the backroom deals of the Senate. It was in the control of organized violence. The Roman state, for all its laws and traditions, was ultimately built on the loyalty of its soldiers. And tonight, the soldiers have made their choice. They are not here to protect the new husband of the empress. They are here on the authority of the emperor. The great historical irony, a detail not lost on ancient commentators, is that the Praetorian Guard had a reputation for being fickle and corrupt. They were known for assassinating emperors they disliked and installing new ones who promised them a bigger bonus. But their loyalty, when it held, was an unstoppable force. Narcissus, by securing the allegiance of the key officers before leaving Ostia, had effectively won the war before the first sword was even drawn. The arrests are about to begin. The tribune of the Praetorian Guard takes 3 slow, deliberate steps into the garden. His hobnail-led sandals crunch on the scattered grape skins and fallen flower petals that litter the ground. He stops, his gaze sweeping across the terrified faces of the most powerful men in Rome. He ignores Messalina completely. His eyes lock onto one man, Gaius Silius. The tribune doesn't speak his name. He doesn't need to. He simply makes a sharp, downward gesture with his hand. Two soldiers break from the line, their movements economical and brutal. They seize Silius by the arms. The consul designate, the most handsome man in Rome, the groom of this phantom wedding, offers no resistance. The fight has gone out of him. The fantasy has shattered against the hard reality of armored men and drawn steel. The man who radiated such effortless control just hours ago now looks like a statue that has been toppled from its pedestal, just a piece of cold, breakable stone. He says nothing. He doesn't protest his innocence. He doesn't even look at Messalina. He simply allows himself to be led away, his magnificent purple-bordered toga, the symbol of his ambition, now looking like a cheap costume. This silence of his is a subject of some historical debate. Was it the stoic acceptance of a Roman nobleman facing his inevitable fate, or was he simply in a state of shock, his mind unable to process the speed and totality of his downfall? Tacitus presents his sign of dignity, a man who knew the game was up and chose to meet his end without complaint. Then, the tribune pulls out a small scroll. It is a copy of the list of names Narcissus got from the terrified messenger. He begins to read, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. Lucius Vitellius, the sycophantic senator you saw earlier, the first to sign the marriage contract, lets out a small whimper. Two more soldiers step forward and take him into custody. The tribune continues, calling out name after name. A general, a priest, a wealthy knight. Each name is a death sentence. And as each man is called, you witness the complete and utter collapse of their bravado. These are men who commanded armies, who swayed crowds in the forum, who owned vast estates worked by thousands of slaves. But now, in the face of the emperor's wrath, they are utterly powerless. Some of them try to protest, to explain. It was just a party, one of them stammers. A joke for the festival. The soldiers ignore them, prodding them forward with the butts of their spears. This is a chilling demonstration of the nature of power in a Roman autocracy. These men's titles, their wealth, their connections, they were all conditional, granted by the emperor and revocable at his whim. They had gambled that power was shifting from Claudius to Messalina and Silius. They had gambled wrong. One of the more curious and pathetic details recorded by the historians is the fate of a man named Nestor, a famous actor. He was known to be one of Messalina's many lovers. When the soldiers came for him, he supposedly tore off his shirt to show them the scars on his back from a flogging he had once received on the orders of Claudius himself. He pleaded that he had been forced into the affair with the Empress, that he had only obeyed her commands out of fear. This anecdote, whether true or not, highlights the desperation of the accused. They were trying to reposition themselves as victims, not conspirators. It also paints a picture of Messalina's power as coercive, a woman whose desires could not be safely refused. The garden is quickly cleared of all the high-profile guests. They are marched away, the silent, shuffling procession of the damned, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos. Overturned tables, spilled wine, and the faint, sweet, cloying smell of crushed grapes. All that remains is Messalina, a few of her terrified ladies in waiting, and a ring of silent, implacable soldiers. The party is over. The guests have been arrested, and the bride is now all alone. For a moment, in the eerie, torch-lit quiet of the ruined garden, Messalina seems as frozen as everyone else. The sheer speed of the collapse has been stunning. One minute she was the queen of a new dynasty, the next, she is a prisoner in her own party. But then, a flicker of her old, defiant energy returns. This is a woman who has navigated the treacherous currents of the imperial court her entire life. She is a survivor. And her survival instinct, honed to a razor's edge, cheeks in. She realizes with a cold clarity that cuts through her wine-induced haze that there is only one person who can save her now. Claudius, her husband, the bumbling, scholarly manipulated for years. She has to plead her case, to cry, to charm, to remind him that she is the mother of his beloved children. She has always been able to bend him to her will. She just needs a few minutes alone with him. She looks around. The Praetorians are not moving to arrest her. Not yet. Their orders, it seems, were to secure the conspirators. Her fate has not yet been decided. It's a slim window of opportunity, but it's a window nonetheless. She turns and runs, not with the grace of an empress, but with the frantic scramble of a cornered animal. Her ladies-in-waiting, loyal to the very end, follow her, forming a small, protective screen. She escapes the garden, running through the deserted corridors of the villa and out into the public streets of Rome. The city is quiet now, the festival-goers having staggered home to sweep off the day's excesses. The sudden anonymity of the empty streets is a blessing. But how to get across the city? She has no carriage, no escort. She is just a woman in a stained dress, her hair a mess, running through the dark. And then you witness one of the most pathetic and humiliating images in all of Roman history. Messalina, Empress of Rome, granddaughter of Augustus's own sister, finds an empty municipal refuse cart parked in a side alley. It's a simple, three-wheeled hand cart, the kind used by public slaves to collect garbage and sweep the streets. Without a moment's hesitation, she climbs into the filthy cart, crouching down among the refuse and straw. Two of her most loyal attendants, a freed woman named Poppaea and her own mother, who had arrived at the last minute, begin to push the heavy, creaking cart through the streets. This detail is so specific and so degrading that historians are almost certain it's true. It's the ultimate fall from grace. She is not just a fugitive, she is literally hiding in the trash. The symbolism is brutal and inescapable. The woman who just hours before was the glittering center of Roman society is now being pushed through the streets in a garbage cart, a piece of human refuse to be discarded. Her destination is the eastern edge of the city, the point where the Via Ostiensis, the road from Ostia, enters Rome. Her plan is a desperate one: to intercept Claudius's carriage on the road, to throw herself at his feet and beg for forgiveness before he can reach the palace and be swayed by the cold counsel of his freedmen. It is a race against time, a race between an imperial convoy and a hand-pushed trash cart. The question of why the Praetorians let her go is a curious one. Was it a deliberate choice? Did the tribune unseen lack the authority to arrest the empress without a direct order? Or was it simply a moment of chaos and confusion, where no one was entirely sure what they were supposed to do with the emperor's wife? Some scholars have suggested that Narcissus may have wanted her to run. Her pathetic, undignified flight would only serve to reinforce the narrative of her guilt and strip her of any remaining mystique or authority. When Claudius finally saw her, she would not be the powerful empress, but a disheveled fugitive covered in grime. It was all part of the psychological campaign to destroy her before she could speak a single word in her own defense. The scene shifts to a stretch of dark, tree-lined road just outside the city walls. The moon is hidden behind clouds, and the air is cool and damp. You can hear the rhythmic creak of wooden wheels and the ragged, desperate breathing of the women pushing the refuse cart. They have made it. Messalina, her mother Dumitiela Ida, and her loyal freed woman are waiting in the shadows by the side of the road, a small, pathetic ambush party. Messalina is no longer the ecstatic maenad from the party. She is a woman stripped bare of all her apparent pretense. Her fine silk dress is torn. She is shivering, though whether from the night air or from sheer terror, it's impossible to say. She is peering into the darkness, listening, waiting for the sound that will signal either her salvation or her doom. The approaching sound of the imperial carriage. This is her last desperate gamble. Everything now depends on the unique and baffling psychology of her marriage. Claudius was, by all accounts, a strange and contradictory man. He was a ruthless emperor who could order executions without a second thought, but he was also a deeply insecure and easily influenced husband. Messalina is banking on the latter. She knows her power over him. She has seen him forgive her for countless smaller transgressions. She is counting on the fact that the bond between them, the shared history, the two children they have together, will be stronger than logic of his advisors. The great what-if hangs heavy in the air, What if she succeeds? What if she reaches him? The ancient historian Tacitus seems to believe that she would have won. He writes that if Narcissus had not been there, Claudius's anger would have undoubtedly softened, and Messalina would have been saved. Her entire strategy is to turn a political crisis back into a domestic dispute. In the halls of power, she is a traitor, but here, on a dark road, she can be just a wife, a weeping, remorseful woman begging her husband for another chance. Then she hears it. A distant drumming sound, the sound of many horses moving at speed. A faint glimmer of torchlight appears far down the road, a moving constellation of fireflies in the dark. It's them, the imperial convoy. Messalina steps out from the shadows, ready to throw herself in front of the carriage. Her mother stands beside her, a grim, silent support. The plan is simple. Create a scene, force the convoy to stop, and then let her tears and her history do the rest. The sound grows louder, the lights brighter. You can now make out the shapes of the mounted guards, their helmets bobbing in the torchlight. You can hear the jingle of harnesses and the sharp crack of the driver's whip. The carriage itself, a large, dark bulk, is visible now, thundering towards them. This is the moment of truth, the culmination of the entire insane day. It all comes down to this one confrontation on a lonely stretch of road. You can feel the tension in the air, a sense of a story holding its breath, waiting to see which way the scales of fate will tip. Will the Emperor stop? Will he listen? Can the woman who orchestrated a coup in the afternoon talk her way out of it at night? Everything she is, everything she has ever been, is focused on this single, desperate hope that the man she betrayed will still, after everything, love her enough to listen. The imperial carriage, a dark juggernaut, bows down the road, not slowing in the slightest. Messalina steps forward, her arms outstretched, her voice a desperate cry. "Claudius, my husband, listen to me." The driver of the carriage doesn't even seem to see her. The horses, spurred on by the urgency of their mission, thunder past. For a heart-stopping moment, it looks like she will be trampled under their hooves. She throws herself back just in time, the wind from the passing convoy whipping her hair and clothes. The carriage has passed her. Her ambush has failed. But then, with a screech of wooden brake blocks and a flurry of shouted commands, the convoy shudders to a halt about 50 yards down the road. They have seen her. They have stopped. A flicker of hope ignites in Messalina's eyes. She begins to run towards the carriage, her mother struggling to keep up. The carriage door opens, but it is not the stooped, familiar figure of her husband who emerges. It is Narcissus. He steps out and stands in the middle of the road, a small, unassuming man in a simple tunic, blocking her path. He holds up a hand, a simple gesture of command, and the Praetorian guards around him subtly shift their positions, forming a loose but impenetrable barrier between Messalina and the carriage. Claudius is in there, just a few feet away, but he might as well be on the move. This is the direct confrontation you have been waiting for. The Empress versus the secretary. The blue-blooded aristocrat versus the former slave. All the power and privilege of her ancestry against the cold, bureaucratic power he has amassed for himself. The Emperor is busy, Narcissus says, his voice calm and level, carrying easily in the night air. He has no time for distractions. The sheer, insulting audacity of the statement is breathtaking. He is speaking to the Empress of Rome as if she is a common beggar. Messalina, for the first time, seems to be at a loss for words. She has no power over this man. He is immune to her charms, her tears, her threats. He sees her not as an empress or a wife, but as a problem to be managed, a threat to be neutralized. Narcissus then delivers the killing blow. He doesn't shout. He doesn't gloat. He simply presents her with a document, a small scroll he unrolls in the torchlight. "The Emperor has been made aware," he says, his voice dripping with false formality, "of your many business arrangements, and of your new marriage to the Senator Silius." He then begins to read from the scroll, a dry, factual account of the day's events. The wedding, the contract, the witnesses. It's a recital of the charges against her, delivered not with passion or anger, but with the cold, dispassionate precision of a court clerk. This is the great, unresolved question that haunts this scene. Was Claudius actually aware of what Narcissus was doing? Was he sitting in that carriage, listening to this confrontation, and silently approving of his freedman's actions? Or was he susceptible entirely on his own authority? The historian Tacitus suggests the latter, that Claudius was so overwhelmed that Narcissus had to shout into his ear just to make him understand what was happening. In this view, Narcissus is the puppeteer, and the emperor is merely the puppet, his strings being pulled from the passenger seat. A stranger and perhaps more controversial theory is that Narcissus had no intention of ever letting Claudius see his wife. He knew his master's weakness. The entire purpose of this stop was not for the emperor's benefit, but for his own. It was a power play. He was demonstrating, to Messalina and to the Praetorian guards watching, that he was the one in charge. He was the gatekeeper to the emperor, and the gate was now closed. Messalina tries to appeal to him, to the guards, to anyone who will listen. She speaks of her children, Britannicus and Octavia. "Let me speak to the father of my children," she wails. But Narcissus is unmoved. He simply gestures to the tribune of the guard. "Take her," he says. "Take her to the gardens of Lucullus, and hold her there. The emperor will decide her fate in the morning." He gets back into the carriage. The door closes, and the convoy begins to move again, leaving Messalina alone on the road, surrounded by soldiers who are no longer her protectors but her jailers. She is lost. The secretary has won. The soldiers close in around you, their faces impassive in the flickering torchlight. There is no roughness, no overt hostility. They are simply doing their job. An officer tells you, in a tone that is neither kind nor cruel, that you are to come with them. You are escorted away from the main road, your last hope disappearing with the receding sound of the imperial carriage. You are now officially a prisoner. Your destination is one of the most famous and luxurious properties in all of Rome, the Gardens of Lucullus. This is not a prison. It is a sprawling, palatial estate on the Pincian Hill, a masterpiece of landscape architecture and opulent design. It was originally built by Lucius Licinius Lucullus, a famous general and epicure of the late Republic, a man whose name became synonymous with extravagant wealth. After his death, the gardens passed into imperial hands, a private paradise for the ruling family. This choice of location is a deliberate and deeply ironic one. Narcissus is not sending you to a dank dungeon in the Matine prison. He is confining you to a golden cage. You are to be held in a place of immense beauty and pleasure, a place where you have probably attended countless parties and leisurely strolls. Now, its beauty is a mockery. Its familiar pals the boundaries of your captivity. The guards led you through the grand gates, and you find yourself in a world of silent, moonlit perfection. You walk along pathways paved with intricate mosaics, past statues that gleam like ghosts in the dark. You can hear the gentle splash of fountains and the rustle of leaves in the meticulously pruned trees. This place is a testament to the Roman elite's obsession with tamed nature. A particularly fascinating feature of these gardens, and others like them, was the Hippodrome racetrack, designed for contemplative walks. It was a space engineered for peaceful thought, a cruel irony for someone whose thoughts must be racing with panic. The soldiers led you to a small but exquisitely decorated villa at the heart of the estate. They post a guard at the door and then withdraw, leaving you in a sudden, unnerving silence. You are alone in a beautifully furnished room, the air scented with cedarwood and flowers. It's a comfortable, luxurious prison, but a prison nonetheless. Historians have speculated about Narcissus's motives for this choice. On one level, it was a practical matter of security and discretion. Holding the Empress in a public prison would create a spectacle and could provoke sympathy for her. Confining her to a private imperial estate kept the affair contained, manageable. But on another level, it was a piece of psychological warfare. By placing you in a setting of such familiar luxury, he is reminding you of everything you are about to lose. This is the world you once commanded, and now you are a prisoner within it. There's also the strange question of ownership. According to some ancient sources, Messalina had actually coveted these very gardens for herself. They were owned by a wealthy nobleman named Valerius Asiaticus, and Messalina, using her influence, had allegedly trumped up false charges against him to force him to commit suicide so she could seize his property. This story is one of the key pieces of evidence used by her detractors to paint her as greedy and ruthless. If it's true, then the irony of her imprisonment is almost poetic in its cruelty. She is now a captive in the very paradise she is said to have stolen. The debate over whether she truly framed Asiaticus is one of those classic historical controversies. The evidence is purely circumstantial, provided by writers who were hostile to her. Was she a monster of greed? Or was this another convenient story, perhaps even one spread by Narcissus himself, to justify her eventual execution? You sink onto a silk-covered couch, the reality of your situation finally crashing down. The adrenaline that has fueled your flight and your frantic hope is gone, replaced by a cold, heavy exhaustion. There is nothing left to do, no one left to persuade. You are trapped. All you can do is wait for the morning, and for the judgment of a man you can no longer reach. The beautiful, silent garden outside is no longer a symbol of your power. It is now the antechamber of your death. The hours crawl by in the silent, perfumed villa. Each splash of a distant fountain, each rustle of a leaf outside your window sounds unnaturally loud in the oppressive quiet. You are adrift in a sea of dread, with nothing to hold on to. Hope is gone. All that remains is the grim, patient waiting. Then you hear footsteps. Not the heavy, rhythmic tread of soldiers, but a softer, more hesitant sound. The door to your room opens and a figure is silhouetted in the doorway. It is a woman, older, her face etched with a weary resignation. It is your mother, Domitia Lepida. The guards have allowed her to come to you. A final, small act of mercy in a day that has shown none. She enters the room, and for a long moment, the two of you just look at each other. This is not a warm, comforting reunion. Your relationship with your mother has always been, to put it mildly, complicated. Domitia Lepida was a formidable figure in her own right, a woman of great beauty and ambition from one of Rome's most powerful families. She and Messalina were reportedly rivals to proud, strong-willed women who clashed constantly. According to the historian Tacitus, they had been estranged for years. But she is here now, when all your powerful friends have been arrested, when your handsome lover has been led away, when your husband has turned his face from you. Your mother is the one who has come to sit with you in the dark. She doesn't offer false hope. She doesn't tell you that everything will be all right. She is a pragmatist, a woman who understands the brutal mechanics of Roman power better than anyone. She knows that the game is over. Narcissus has won. Claudius, left to his own devices, might have wavered, but with his freedman whispering poison in his ear, there can be only one outcome. Your life, she says, her voice quiet but firm, is over. The words are not cruel. They are a statement of fact, a diagnosis delivered by a doctor who knows the disease is terminal. All that is left is to find a decent end. This is a profoundly Roman piece of advice. For the Roman elite, the concept of a good death was paramount. To be dragged through the streets and publicly executed was the ultimate humiliation. The preferred alternative for a person of high rank convicted of a serious crime was to take one's own life. It was a way to retain one last shred of dignity, to cheat the executioner and rob your enemies of the satisfaction of seeing you humbled. It was the final act of a noble Roman, a way of asserting control even in the face of absolute defeat. Domitia Lepida is not just consoling her daughter. She is giving her the last piece of useful advice she will ever receive. She is urging her to die like a Roman, not like a common criminal. The academic world has long been fascinated by the role of prominent women in the imperial court. Figures like Domitia Lepida are often shadowy, appearing only briefly in the historical record. Were they just pawns in the games of men, or were they active players in their own right, wielding influence through their sons, daughters, and husbands? The arrival of Messalina's mother at this critical moment suggests a world of complex female relationships and power dynamics that existed largely out of sight of the male historians who wrote the official accounts. Her presence here is a reminder that Messalina was not just an empress. She was a daughter, a powerful lineage of powerful women who knew the rules of this lethal game all too well. You listen to your mother's words, the final, bitter lesson. The path she is offering is a dark and lonely one. It requires a kind of courage you're not sure you possess. The wild, impulsive, life-affirming energy that has defined your entire existence is now being asked to turn inward, to become the instrument of its own destruction. Your mother's advice is practical, it is wise, it is Roman. But as you sit there in the beautiful, silent room, all you feel is a cold, bottomless despair. The party is over. The flight is over. All the frantic motion of the last 24 hours has come to this. A quiet room, a final conversation, and a terrible choice. While you sit in the silent gardens contemplating your mother's grim advice, the scene shifts one last time, back to the heart of power, the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill. The mood here is not one of crisis or tension. It is strangely, uneventful normal. Emperor Claudius has returned. He was swept into the palace by his guards and secretaries, bypassing any potential onlookers. He did not go to the Praetorian camp to rally the troops as Narcissus had suggested. That was just a pretext. Instead, he was brought straight home, and now he is doing what he always does at this hour. You are a fly on the wall in the emperor's private dining room. It's a lavish space, but the atmosphere is subdued. Claudius is reclining on his dining couch, propped up by cushions. Servants move quietly, bringing him plates of food and refilling his wine cup. A few of his most trusted advisors, including the ever-present Narcissus, are in the room watching him, waiting. But the emperor is not issuing orders. He is not demanding updates on the arrests. He is not drafting an execution decree. He is eating. He seems to have retreated into the comforting, familiar ritual of his evening meal. He comments on the flavor of the roasted dormouse, a bizarre but popular delicacy among the Roman elite. He asks for a different vintage of wine. He seems fine. Then something utterly bizarre happens. After finishing a particularly generous cup of wine, he turns to one of his attendants and asks, with a tone of mild curiosity, "Why is the Lady Messalina not joining me for dinner this evening?" A stunned silence falls over the room. Narcissus and the others exchange looks of pure disbelief. Has he forgotten? Has the shock of the day's events, combined with the wine, somehow wiped his memory clean? It seems impossible. And yet, there it is. The emperor of the Roman world, whose wife just hours ago attempted to overthrow him in a public wedding ceremony, seems to have completely forgotten about the entire affair. This is, without a doubt, one of the strangest and most debated moments in the entire saga. The ancient historian Suetonius, who loved a good, gossipy anecdote, presents it as proof of Claudius's absent-minded, foolish nature. He paints a picture of a man so detached from reality that a major coup attempt can just slip his mind after a glass or two of wine. Modern historians, however, are more skeptical. Some suggest that this was not forgetfulness, but a form of psychological denial. The trauma was so great that his mind simply refused to engage with it, retreating instead to the safety of routine. Others propose a more cynical and intriguing possibility, that Claudius was not forgetting but stalling. He knew exactly what had happened, but he was reluctant to take the final, irrevocable step of ordering his wife's execution. By forgetting, he was pushing the decision off, buying himself time, perhaps hoping that in the morning, a less bloody solution would present itself. It was a form of passive resistance, an attempt to slow down the relentless machinery of justice that Narcissus had set in motion. This theory is supported by what Claudius does next. He doesn't just ask about his wife once. He continues to ask, and then he says something that sends a chill down Narcissus's spine. He tells an attendant to go and tell that poor woman, his own words, that poor woman that she is to come and plead her case before me tomorrow morning. This is it. Narcissus's worst fear realized. The emperor's resolve is crumbling. The anger he had so carefully stoked on the carriage ride from Ostia is being washed away by wine and a flicker of pity. Claudius is going to give her a hearing. He is going to let her speak. And Narcissus knows, with the certainty of a man who knows his life is on the line, that if Messalina is allowed to see the emperor in the morning, she will win. All of this, the frantic ride, the arrests, the careful manipulation, will have been for nothing. and his own execution will surely follow. He has to act, now, tonight, before the sun rises on a more forgiving emperor. Narcissus slips out of the dining hall, his movements swift and silent. The look on his face is no longer one of calculated control. It's the look of a man who has just seen his entire, carefully constructed plan about to go up in smoke. He has a few hours, at most, before the emperor's drunken pity solidifies into a morning pardon. The time for subtlety and manipulation is over. It is time for a final, decisive, and utterly illegal act. He summons a tribune of the Praetorian Guard, one of the officers he trusts, a man who has been with him since Ostia. He meets him in a quiet, torchlit corridor, away from the prying eyes and ears of the palace staff. Narcissus knows he cannot go back to Claudius. He cannot risk trying to persuade the emperor again. The mood has shifted, so he does the only thing he can. He lies. The emperor, Narcissus says, his voice a low, urgent command, has ordered the execution of his wife. He commands you to go to the gardens of Lucullus and carry out the sentence. Immediately. The tribune hesitates. This is a monumental order. To execute an empress, the mother of the heir, without a written warrant signed by the emperor himself. It is a career-ending, if not life-ending risk. He asks for the official document, the death warrant. And this is where Narcissus makes his final, audacious move. He doesn't have a warrant, so he fakes one. The historical accounts are a bit vague on the exact mechanics of this. Did he forge a document on the spot? Or did he simply claim that the order was a verbal one? A direct command from Caesar that superseded all normal protocol. The Roman historian Tacitus words it carefully, saying Narcissus burst out of the room and told the officers that the emperor had ordered her death. This implies a verbal command, a lie delivered with such authority and urgency that the soldiers had no time to question it. This is the ultimate grey area, the question that makes this a story not just of betrayal, but of a bureaucratic coup. Did Narcissus have the emperor's tacit approval? Did Claudius, in his wine-addled state, say something that could be twisted into an execution order? Or was this a pure fabrication, a freedman taking the full, terrifying weight of imperial authority onto his own shoulders? Many historians believe this was Narcissus's personal Rubicon. The moment he crossed from loyal servant to rogue agent, acting not on the emperor's will, but on what he believed to be the emperor's best interests, which, conveniently, were also his own. To bolster his fabricated command, Narcissus adds a chillingly practical detail. He sends another freedman, a man named Dius, along with the tribune. Dius's official role was to oversee the education of the imperial children. His unofficial role tonight is to be the witness, the man who will ensure the order is carried out without hesitation and without mercy. He is there to make sure the tribune's nerve doesn't fail. It's a masterstroke of delegation and plausible deniability. Narcissus gives the order, Dius ensures it is followed, and the tribune of the guard swings the sword. If something goes wrong, if the emperor wakes in the morning with a clear head and a change of heart, the blame can be diffused. But Narcissus knows this is a long shot. He is staking everything on the hope that, presented with a completed act, Claudius will be too relieved or too cowed to punish the man who solved his problem for him. The tribune, convinced or perhaps just intimidated, finally nods his assent. He gathers a small detachment of his most reliable men. They leave the palace, their footsteps echoing in the empty courtyards, and head out into the dark streets of Rome. They are a small, grim procession, a death squad authorized by a forged command, on their way to a beautiful garden to kill an empress. The final, bloody act of this long and terrible day is now unstoppable. The scene returns to you in the silent, luxurious villa in the heart of the gardens. The moon is high, the air is still. Your mother, Dumitia Lepida, has said all she can say. She has given you her final, brutal advice, and now she sits with you in a shared, heavy silence. The energy has drained from the room, replaced by a profound and listless melancholy. You lie on a couch weeping, not with the frantic, pleading tears of your roadside confrontation, but with the quiet, exhausted tears of utter defeat. Your mother's advice to find a decent end hangs in the air. But you can't bring yourself to act on it. It is one thing to be reckless with your life, it is another thing entirely to end it with your own hand. All your life, you have been a creature of impulse, of vibrant, chaotic energy. The cold, deliberate act of self-destruction is a kind of discipline you do not possess. You are in these final moments simply a young woman terrified of dying. Then the sound comes, the sound you have been dreading, the heavy, measured tread of soldiers' boots on the gravel path outside. The door to your villa bursts open, not with a polite knock, but with the splintering crack of forced entry. Standing in the doorway is the tribune you saw earlier at the party, his face as grim and unreadable as ever. Behind him are 2 or 3 of his men, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords, and beside him stands the freedman, Claudius, his face pinched with a kind of bureaucratic distaste, as if he is here to deal with an unpleasant administrative problem. Claudius steps forward. He does not speak to you with the deference to an empress. He unleashes a torrent of verbal abuse, a stream of insults that Tacitus describes as slave-like insolence. He calls you names, recounts your sins, his voice dripping with the righteous fury of a subordinate who finally has the upper hand. He is the warm-up act, the one sent to break your spirit, to strip you of any remaining shred of dignity before the final act. You don't respond. You just continue to weep, your face buried in a cushion. Your mother is the one who speaks. She turns to you, her voice sharp, cutting through your tears and Claudius's tirade. There is no more time for weeping, she says. You have lived your life. Now you must face the end. Her words are like a splash of icy water. The tribune grows impatient. This is taking too long. He draws his sword. The sound of the steel scraping against the leather scabbard is sharp and final. It is the sound of reality, cutting through the haze of grief and fear. You finally look up. You see the sword, its polished surface reflecting the flickering lamplight. You see the impassive face of the man holding it, and in that moment you finally understand. Your mother was right. There is no escape. There is no pardon coming. This is the end of the story. The historical accounts of this final moment are brief and brutal. Tacitus says that you made a last, fumbling attempt to follow your mother's advice, taking a dagger and trying to press it first to your throat, then to your chest, but your hand trembled too much. Your will to live was, in the end, stronger than your resolve to die with Roman dignity. Seeing your hesitation, the tribune steps forward. He doesn't wait for you to try again. He is a soldier trained for efficiency, not for drama. He raises his sword, and with a single, swift, professional stroke he ends it. There is no ceremony. There are no last words recorded for history. Just a sudden, shocking silence in a beautiful room, in a beautiful garden. The story of the final, frantic 72 hours of Empress Messalina, the party, the wedding, the race, the hope, the despair is over. The wild, chaotic energy that burned so brightly is extinguished. Outside, the fountains continue to splash. Outside, the fountains continue to shine down on the perfect, silent gardens. And now, as the story rests, a gentle quiet begins to fall. Let the echoes of this tale fade, like ripples on a still, dark lake. The torchlight in the garden has flickered out, leaving only the soft, peaceful darkness of your own room. The frantic energy of that long-ago day has dissolved, leaving behind a profound and welcome stillness. You can feel this stillness seeping into you, a sense of calm spreading through your body like a warm, gentle tide. No more races against time. All of the tension has been released, all the drama has been resolved. There is nothing left to do now but drift on this quiet current, letting it carry you further and further away from the waking world. The story has done its work. It has walked with you to the very edge of sleep, and now it gently lets go of your hand, allowing you to float free into the soft, boundless ocean of your own dreams. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.